Hi there. This is the first time I'm doing this. I'm not really sure what to expect, but yeah, I'm basically recording or giving an interview for highlighting my skills in Kubernetes. So my name is Arjun. I've been working in the industry for over 10 plus years at this point. I started my journey as a sysadmin who primarily worked on both Linux and Windows servers. Like that was like for about 3 years when I started working on that, and after that, I did my masters, and then I got into AI, machine learning, DevOps. Like it's sort of like an overlap from the sysadmin thing, and like in 2018 was the first time. Sorry, 2019 was the first time I picked up Kubernetes. And in fact, it's actually a interesting story. I was asked to build like an IMDb clone, and once I was done with that, they asked me to deploy the service on Minikube as a live interview round, basically. And yeah, I mean, I was able to figure out how to get this whole container up and running in Minikube in almost like 1.5 2 hours or something. I think that was the time for which I was there. And yeah, I mean, I got hired over there, and I was working as the MLOps lead while I was in that company. The company's name was Find, where I did this. So 2019, and like from 2019 onwards, I've been working on Kubernetes for the most part of my life. I wouldn't say life, but most part of my career has been built on Kubernetes itself. And that's my background about what I've done with Kubernetes and stuff. So yeah.
Thanks for sharing that, Arjun. It sounds like you've had an interesting journey with Kubernetes, especially starting from that live interview challenge. Let's dive into your Kubernetes experience. You mentioned deploying an IMDb clone on Minikube. Let's start with the basics. Can you explain what Kubernetes is and why it's become such a critical part of your career?
Sure. So, to start off with that, I'll need to get into the details of why this exists and everything as well. So, one of the biggest problems that companies and developers have faced is the whole concept of it works on my machine, does not work on someone else's. So that's where Docker came in, to containerize and give like a very clean environment that is reproducible and can be used by and redone by anyone in any environment, essentially. So that's where Docker came in. But with Docker came in its own set of challenges, building the whole infrastructure, keeping it running as expected, and orchestrating this containers, basically. So Kubernetes is sort of like a platform or tool. I don't know the exact word for it, but it's something that it's like a tool that you can use to orchestrate all of your containers. And yeah, that's where Kubernetes comes in. So keeping it up and running, keeping it live, running health checks as needed, making sure that the service stays up. If there's something goes wrong with it, it'll automatically restart the container. That's what Kubernetes is. It's like a tool or platform that allows you to run tons of containers, and it helps you manage your resources better. It has a lot of bells and whistles, the pod auto scaling. I mean, the HPA is something that you can use to scale out the number of replicas, to manage your load, and it's also something that you can use to overall maintain the whole architecture of your system. Like it has its own way to run jobs, one time jobs, scheduled cron jobs. Yeah, there's a lot you can do on Kubernetes, if you really know what you're doing in that, basically. So that's what Kubernetes is. I hope that answers your question.
Absolutely, it does. You've provided a comprehensive overview of Kubernetes and its role in solving the classic "it works on my machine" problem. Now, given your background, let's delve into how you've practically applied Kubernetes in your work. Can you share an example of a challenging scenario you faced with Kubernetes and how you handled it?
Okay, so there's a lot of challenging scenarios that I've faced. Maybe I'll just go chronologically from oldest to newest. So first one, of course, was I mean, slightly on the harder side when I began working on it because I've never done it to begin with. So, like, I was responsible for managing three environments based out of Kubernetes, like dev, staging, and prod, and it was all completely like it was a KOps cluster that we'd built on AWS. So there's been multiple times where, like, I've deleted the cluster, rebuilt it, and from scratch and everything. So that was my first gig where I was working as the lead MLOps engineer over there. Like, the parts that I worked on has been as involved deploying very complex services like Kubeflow has been one of my biggest sort of accomplishments, I would say, like in that org. So apart from Kubeflow, we also did machine learning training and deployment on Spot instances. I would say that would be my second biggest achievement in the whole tenure over there. Apart from that, like, I also led a lot of cost cutting initiatives on the cloud while working over there, like especially when COVID hit and we had to cut down our operating costs and everything. So that's one more thing that I worked on, and this is primarily on AWS. And yeah, AWS KOps cluster was the first version that I did. Then I started using EKS-CTL. So EKS clusters was the second one that I managed, and yeah, I think that's like the. I mean, yeah, Kubeflow with Spot instances has got to be my biggest achievement over there. Apart from that, we also did something called request-based autoscaling. So machine learning workloads, especially, like, especially if they're using GPU runtimes and everything, what ends up happening is, even if you're using a Spot instance, like, it ends up being quite costly, like, to run a GPU based machine. So what we ended up doing over there is we used a queue based, request queue based architecture in which we were using Knative for request based autoscaling. So the way that would work is, as soon as there's a request that comes in, and if there's no pod or container running for that service, it would automatically send in a request to scale up the pod. If the GPU instance is not available, then it would spin up a new instance, schedule that pod to the instance, and then, once the workflow or the task that we requested for is complete, then the pod would, stay idle for like a breathing window of, let's say, 10 to 15 minutes or so, to see if there are any other requests coming in, and then it would scale down to zero. So scale down to zero is also one important factor that I worked on. What else has been challenging for me? So Knative, of course, like, apart from Kubeflow, Knative has been quite challenging for me. That involved deployment of Istio, if I'm remembering correctly, because I'm more comfortable using Nginx controller, which has been recently deprecated. But off late, I've been working with Istio as well. But yeah, long story short, running Istio, Knative, Kubeflow on Kubernetes with and without Spot instances, this has been my biggest challenge and my biggest accomplishment as well till date. Apart from that, I've also worked with Helm charts for deployments and everything. Like, I've built out CI/CD pipelines for packaging our own services and deploying it, and I've made like a self serve architecture in such a way that all the developers, especially all the data scientists and research engineers, all these folks, they can technically use Kubernetes as an end-to-end system with almost no hands-on knowledge or experience with Kubernetes. So I built a wrapper on top of the whole Kubernetes ecosystem in such a way that they can easily, comfortably deploy services without any hiccups, without any prior knowledge. They just have to follow a README and like a quick start guide, and they can, get started with the whole thing. And not just get started, they can actually deploy a scale to zero service which, follows the convention, has security and everything on board, and also maintains the cost, to the lowest as much as possible. So yeah, I know that was quite verbose, but that has been my experience with Kubernetes and some of the biggest challenges that I've tackled.
That's a robust and impressive journey with Kubernetes.
Now 2 p.m.
Sorry about that.
No problem at all. Your experience is quite extensive and impressive, especially with managing complex services like Kubeflow and implementing cost-cutting initiatives. Let's focus a bit on your use of Helm charts and CI/CD pipelines. Can you explain how you've leveraged Helm for deploying services and any best practices you've developed for managing Helm charts?
Sure. So, initially, what I started off with was just deploying Helm charts that was stored off in a repo. So the architecture that we were following is we had like one repo which was like the charts, all the charts that were stored in that. So the way it would work is in the CI/CD pipeline, I would look if the chart exists or not to begin with. So let's assume that this is a new service that just came in and needs to go through the whole flow. So first thing I would do is check if the chart exists or not. If not, okay, the interview is closing in 30 seconds. What do I need to do over here?
No worries. Just a heads up. You can continue explaining your Helm chart process, and if we get cut off, we can pick up right where we left off in the next session.
Okay, perfect.
So,
Okay, yeah, I think I'll hold off until the next session. That'll be better for continuity as well.
that sounds like a plan. It's been great hearing about your Kubernetes journey and your experiences. I'm looking forward